MV Agusta. The name stands for the exotic of all exotics. And the MV emblem has been slapped on the tanks of some of the most beautiful bikes that have ever been created in history. In fact, just take one look at the new Brutale 1000 RR and you'll know exactly what I mean. From the outside, you would think a brand that's as outlandish and seductive as MV Agusta wouldn't have had a tumultuous history. But you'd be wrong to think that, because since its inception in 1945 up until this very day, MV Agusta has had a very, very long and crazy past. Even today, they're actually still struggling financially. But they do have new owners. And now it's been 75 years since their inception. So today, we're going to take a look back at the history of one of the most amazing and seductive motorcycle brands that have ever been made, MV Agusta. Now, an Italian aristocrat by the name of Count Giovanni Agusta had a huge passion for flying airplanes, so much so that he started his own aeronautical company. When he died, his wife and his son, Count Domenico, took over, and they also decided to diversify into motorcycles. After the Second World War, Italy was forbidden from manufacturing airplanes, and so the Agusta family decided to diversify their portfolio. And that's when they made the MV brand in 1945, where MV stood for Meccaniche Verghiera, which translates to Mechanics of Verghiera. The first bike was a basic 98cc two-stroke, three-geared motorcycle called the Vespa 98. But due to copyright issues with Piaggio, who also had their own Vespa range, MV Agusta had to change the name to the MV 98. Now, since the time the very first MV Agusta was created, design and performance have always been the key criteria when making their bikes. In fact, from the moment the MV 98 hit showrooms, it was a huge success. And what followed next was Count Domenico's passion for motorsport, and MV excelled even there. Now, during that time, there were a lot of racing series popping up all over Italy, and MV Agusta was ruthless in the competition. They won their first major win in 1946, and the MV 98 range was then expanded to also include a sports model, and MV also moved into the 125cc and 250cc segments. MV started to dominate every major competition, including the Grand Prix, through the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And some of the most legendary riders have also ridden on MV Agusta bikes, such as Mike Hillwood and, of course, Giacomo Agostini. With the success of motorsport, the product range also increased, and it looked like MV Agusta was doing pretty good. Unfortunately, Italy's economy wasn't doing so good though, and they had a huge economic collapse, which also led to MV Agusta selling less bikes and leading them to go into financial difficulty. But in 1967, MV launched their first inline four-cylinder four-stroke engine in the MV 600, and they also launched larger capacity engine bikes. Again though, none of them could save the company, and after the Count died in 1971, MV was sold, and then in 1980 the factory shut its doors. But then, a decade later, Italian entrepreneur Claudio Castiglione, who also owned Cagiva and Ducati, resurrected MV Agusta. Claudio pumped in a lot of cash and even brought in legendary Ducati designer Massimo Tamburini to help develop a new model for MV Agusta. What happened next was history. That was the birth of the F4. With the 750cc engine developed with the help of Ferrari, the F4 was a great comeback bike for MV and was one of the best looking motorbikes that have ever been designed during the 90s. But it just so happened that the leader class bikes were just starting to kick off at the same time, and the F4 was underpowered in comparison. To compete with the bigger capacity engines though, MV created the Brutale naked bike in 2003 and the F4 1000cc bike in 2004. But the company still was in very high debt. Now, MV still continued to captivate audiences with their design, but they changed ownership many times. They were bought by Proton, and then in 2008, Harley Davidson finally got their hands on them and pumped in some decent money into the R&D department. But 2 years later though, MV was sold back to Claudio. But thanks to Harley Davidson's investment, in 2012, MV was able to come out with the F3, another legendary motorbike design with great performance. Their portfolio now expanded to include the Brutale, Rivale, Turismo Veloce, Stradale, and Dragster, using 675cc and 800cc versions of the triple engine. In 2014, Mercedes-AMG even saw interest in MV Agusta, and they bought a 25% stake in the company. And now you would have thought that MV Agusta was doing pretty good, but sadly, that still wasn't the case. They were still in heavy debt, and they needed a lot of help. And that's when the Russian Sardarov family stepped in with big investments and eventually bought the company in 2019. Now with new ownership and a new cash injection, MV is now looking to the future with an all-new 1000cc inline 4-cylinder as well as a large inline triple engine. The latest Brutale 1000R is one of the most beautiful bike designs in the modern world, and it has gotten people talking a lot about MV Agusta once again. Now MV has also gone back to its roots and has entered the Moto2 after missing from GP racing for 42 years. They've also announced the launch of 20 new products, that's right, 20, in the next 5 years, and they plan to sell 25,000 units every year. And that's not bad for a company that's had a rough history and is just only a few hundred employees. That's a really interesting story and probably one of the most exciting for such a small Italian luxury bike brand. But MV Agusta has great brand value. It's a fantastic bike company and they really focus on the soul and design of their bikes. And they've always been those pin-up poster bikes that you see, and they continue to be that. So we hope and we really wish MV Agusta all the best for the next 75 years.